Alright, Victorum Gaming fans and SPQR fans, we're back and we're taking a look at the second of the Dacian scenarios here, Dacian and Sarmatians, as part of our ongoing series covering all the scenarios for the factions, and this is the second in our trilogy for the Dacians and Sarmatians. So this one is again called To the Rescue, and as you can kind of see, this one definitely has kind of a funky deployment setup, so we'll get into that in just a second. As usual, both players have the same amount of denarii for the battle. The enemy player is the attacker, and here the Dacian Sarmatian player is the defender again. And on the setup side, so the Dacian and Sarmatian player deploys all their infantry first. The attacking player moves all of their units on from either or both sides of the table in the first turn. And then the attacking player has the first phase. So fairly similar already in setup to the first mission, which was Speed of Horse. So again, if you're playing the Dacians, your cavalry is going to start off the board, and here the attackers basically get to already get you sort of in a pincer movement or double flank attack here. If you're the attacker and you're only deploying on one edge, you're probably doing it wrong. Depending on your army, you might not want to spread out too thinly, but on the other hand, being able to trap the enemy between you does in general seem better than not doing that. So although you do have to keep in mind that the Sarmatian reinforcements are likely going to be coming in on the other edges, so you definitely want to maybe deploy a little bit more towards the center just to not get immediately charged by any of their cavalry that do end up coming on. But let's move on to the special rules and see what's going on here. So at the start of the second turn and every turn thereafter, both players select one of their heroes who's on the battlefield and make an opposed bravery check between them. The Dacian and Sarmatian player adds a cumulative +1 bonus every turn after the second. For every point by which Dacian and Sarmatian player beats the enemy, he may move one cavalry unit onto the battlefield from either Sarmatian table edge. So, kind of as we suspected there. And so again, starting on turn 3, right, because it says after the second turn, is when you roll. So, and here, let's see, both players select one of their heroes. Okay, so in that sense, obviously, if you're the Dacian player, you definitely want to select your best hero and make that bravery check, and hopefully you do have a really good bravery score if you're trying to prevent the opposing player from getting their units in. Obviously, the longer they don't have their cavalry, and maybe a good chunk of their force is composed of cavalry, so the longer they have units off the board, the better it is for you. Again, you get to basically bring all your stuff in turn 1. So if you play pretty aggressively, you can certainly put the hurt on the Dacian player before their cavalry starts arriving. So this isn't necessarily one that definitely, or clearly favors the Dacians, and the attacker will get to go first here. If you're the Dacians, you might not want to spread out too much. So again, depending on what kind of terrain you set up, some speed bumps and other terrain just to slow the attacker's progress will be good. And depending on how the attacker deploys, again, let's say if you're the Dacian player, if they really just made one flank clearly weaker than the other, you might just take everything and go after that weak flank, try and wipe out one area of the attacker. They're still going to have some distance to cover to get to you. And then that will hopefully buy you some time so you can kind of reorganize to deal with the remaining troops. And hopefully by then you can start bringing some of your cavalry units on and start dealing with the enemy as you need to. So, and again, Dacians have some of the best heavy-hitting cavalry in this game. So, especially if you've gone sort of full on with the heavy cataphracts, there's not much that stands up to them. But so you certainly don't want to spread out maybe too thinly here. If you're the Dacian player, maybe you want to concentrate and then figure out where where you want to make your move early on. You do have to deploy all your stuff first. So again, that kind of will inform hopefully the attacker's deployment in turn to see where they want to where and how they want to deal with you. So some different strategies there. Again, you want to be maybe a little bit conservative and keep your stuff close to the center and with some intervening terrain. Now if you spread out too thinly, the attacker can basically just kind of tailor their deployment to wipe some of your units out if you've kind of left some stragglers and stuff like that. But if you have some extra maybe throwaway units, you might try and bait them into if you deploy them towards the Sarmatian table edges, you might bait the attacker into moving some of their stuff off to the sides here, which if you can keep them alive long enough, that means your cavalry could be coming in from those edges and potentially just get a really solid charge off and wipe things out. So, but lots of little strategies and counter strategies to think of there. All right, and then how do we win this one? So the attacking player will claim victory if he can destroy every infantry unit on the Dacian and Sarmatian warband, either through injury or failure of will to fight. So, as I said, if you're the attacking player, considering that the Dacian players won't get to start rolling for their cavalry until turn 3, and if they've got a significant part of their army as cavalry, maybe even more than half, you want to be as aggressive as possible, deploy on both sides, trap those infantry units of theirs, and just start wiping them out. Because again, if you got really aggressive and you had some of your heroes and units kitted out to basically move faster, using like a horn or something to get that third action move again. Some heroes have other ways of motivating troops to get them to move a little bit faster too. You can be right on top of the Dacian infantry, and they do have some nasty things and all that. But if they're missing like half their army, if that's their cavalry, you have the points advantage, you have the numbers advantage, hopefully. So you should be able to get in there and wipe them out. So this is definitely a test for the Dacians. And yes, they get to bring in their cavalry off of board edges, but again, the game could potentially be over by then. So this is definitely one where you got to be a little bit more conservative as the Dacian player overall. So pretty tough stuff here, but overall pretty neat mission. Again, mainly involved with like wiping out the other side, except there's that caveat here that's basically got to be the Dacian infantry. Now, to make this a playable scenario and fair, if the Dacian player picks an all cavalry list, obviously, the attacker couldn't win. So there's definitely some things that like you kind of got to coordinate with your opponent. Otherwise, this really won't work. And that's basically the only victory condition. So I guess if the Dacians keep their infantry alive somehow, then they win. Would be nice if there was like a turn limit specified here or something like that. So you might need to organize that with your the person that you're playing with, just to set some boundaries, I guess, or limits on this. Otherwise, it's kind of open-ended. I mean, if there's no turn limit or other condition there, then eventually the infantry might get wiped out. So, but overall, pretty neat scenario. And like I said, probably could just use a couple small tweaks just to clarify some things and establish some other boundaries. But overall, pretty neat mission for the Dacians to the rescue, and really could be modified for any of the other factions or combinations of factions. Could make for some interesting scenarios as the cavalry comes into the rescue or not. So overall, pretty good stuff. And hope you guys enjoyed our little look here. So this is that second mission to the rescue. On our third and final video, we will wrap things up for the Dacians, and then we will move on to another faction. So if you could, give us a like and a subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more SPQR content.